Hey folks, I'm Tom Vasel, and this is Look Back on the Dice Tower, where we go back 1, 5, and 10 years ago and look at the reviews I did, and I tell you what I think of those games today. Not so many games today, but let's get started. Booze Barons is the first one. This is a game where you're trying to figure out what kind of baron each person is, what their secret goal is, but there's not enough information really. It's on the cusp of being good, but there's just not enough information to really care. It's almost too easy. Expo 1906 is actually a pretty solid game. Just doesn't look like much. The production values are pretty low in a sense, but in this game you are putting on an expo, and so you are trying to put these tiles down and get symbols together to accomplish goals. A very cool theme. Just it wasn't as exciting as it could have been. Then we have HARU ICHIBAN, which is a two-player abstract game in which you're moving pieces like frogs and lily pads. Really enjoyed this one. It has almost a Zen feel to it. Quick games, which is always good for an abstract strategy game. Quick pick, Monster Island, I believe. This one here is where you're looking around and you make a face, and everyone else has to pick what face that is that you made. With these monster cards, it really kind of ups the ante. Great game for kids. Meeple War. Really like Meeple War. This is the pre-Carcassonne game where your meeples are fighting all over the board. You're moving them around. What you're doing is you're building different buildings, and these buildings give you actions that you can take. And you can build buildings that give you better actions, and the actions will move meeples around where you score victory points and fight other meeples and try to become the Meeple King. It promotes attacking. I like it a lot. This game did not get much buzz, but it should have. And Escape from Aliens in Outer Space. I took a look at the new reprint of this game. Well, it's a year old now. From... okay, well, it was reprinted, and you can see it there on screen. Osprey Games. My mind went blank there for a moment. But anyhow, Escape from the Aliens Out of Space is a great game where some people are aliens, some people are humans. You don't know who's who. You're all announcing where you're moving. Sometimes it's a lie, sometimes it's not. And the aliens are hunting the hunters. Super stressful game. 5 years ago, I took a look at Super Showdown, which is a two-player asymmetrical game where players have different cards in their hand and they're playing them down. And you don't really have enough information really to figure out who's who. It's a cool concept. Doesn't really work. Empires of the Void. This was the game that introduced me to Red Raven Games. Can you imagine they're only 5 years old and they're already this renowned? But Empires of the Void, a really good space game as you went around. I like when you would sometimes conquer a planet. That planet would give you a different kind of spaceship. Slightly long for what it should be, which is why I dropped it just a bit. And a second edition is coming out this year. I'm very curious to see what that's going to be like, but it is a really solid game. 10 years ago, I took a look at Galactic Expanse Starship Battles. And I gave this a much higher rating than I would give it today, honestly, because the game is okay, but the rule book is atrocious. There's a lot of convolutions about combat, and I would have dinged it more for that nowadays than then. Also, the production's not that great. But there's still a decent game in there of fighting with spaceships and such. Ruckshuck. This is a game of stacking things. It's an interesting concept as you put the rocks on top of each other, and they're deliberately misshapen, some of them more misshapen than others, but they're worth more points. It's more kind of a cool, like, ooh, look at this game. Feel these pieces. Let's play it. Dexterity game. And finally, Faces. 10 years ago, I reviewed Faces. Faces, a party game I still play today, although I've since made a custom version of it, which is like which is why my rating is a 9. It's so high for that reason. I can't even remember what my rating was 10 years ago, probably just a 7. But I like the concept. It was apples to apples with pictures, essentially. And some of the faces in the game were hilarious. So anyway, those are the games that I reviewed 1, 5, and 10 years ago. Thanks so much for watching Look Back. Until next time, I'm Tom Vasel on the Dice Tower.